The biggest race of the NASCAR season kicks off the new year with one of the young stars of our sport emerging victorious as a Daytona 500 champion for one of the biggest names in all of sports. Hey there, race fans. It's Race Day Top 5 with me, Frank 5. The Daytona 500, the great American race, the Super Bowl of stock car racing. It is rare where in sports you open up your season with one of the biggest events of the sports history. Of course, for the NFL, we close out the year with the biggest game of the year, the Super Bowl. For the MLB, you close it out with the multi-game World Series. For NHL, you close out with the Stanley Cup. But in NASCAR, they always start off their season with the biggest race in the Daytona 500 that goes all the way back since 1959. And yesterday's season opening race was a banger with a lot of side-by-side action, great racing, comers and goers, and a thrilling dash to the finish with one of the big names in all of sports hoisting the trophy as an owner, watching his young gun win the sports crown jewel event. Let's talk about all that happened yesterday at Daytona. Number one, Reddick with the last lap pass to become a Daytona 500 champion. Tyler Reddick kicked off the season with a thrilling pass on the last lap off of turn number 4 to take victory to win the 68th annual Daytona 500, beating out Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Joey Logano, Chase Elliott, and Brad Keselowski for the victory. By the way, all those cars ended up wrecked coming to the start-finish line, but I'll get into more of that later. But what a big moment for Tyler Reddick to win the season opening race and kick off a thrilling start to the season. And we didn't really say so much about Tyler Reddick yesterday in the number 45 Chumba Casino Toyota. He was pretty much hovering around the middle of the pack. He started around 26th spot and didn't really make a whole lot of noise, but you could just kind of see him hovering around and just minding his business and just waiting to put himself in position to the very end of the race. Well, as we got into the final stage of the race, he found himself inside the top 15, and then when we had our final round of green flag pit stops with under 15 laps to go, Reddick was able to come in with a couple of differing manufacturers, wasn't able to pit with the Toyotas like I thought he was going to, but when he was able to cycle out, he was able to be in the lead group of those drivers that completed their pit stops and found himself actually at the head of the pack. But he wasn't the leader because Michael McDowell had not yet pitted, hoping that he would go all the way forward without a caution, or if he got the yellow, he put himself in position at the front. Then the caution came out with under 10 laps to go when Denny, Hamlin, and Christopher Bell made contact off of turn 4 and hit the outside wall, thus generating a caution and a 5-lap dash to the finish. Reddick started on the inside lane underneath of Michael McDowell, but McDowell on the outside had Carson Hocevar, his teammate, pushing him, and you know that those two were going to work together versus Reddick, who didn't have any of his teammates right behind him at that final restart. And all Reddick could do was just try to get the best he possibly could on that last lap. Then on the last lap, heading off into turn 1, a wreck transpired on the outside when Hocevar got tagged by Eric Jones, sending them right down in front of Michael McDowell, and Reddick found himself in the front of the field, but racing 3 wide for the lead with Stenhouse and Elliott. Then Reddick pretty much had no help behind him and lost a couple spots down the back straightaway. But then comes his teammate Riley Herbst to help give him the push heading off into turn 3 to propels him to third, and then they were able to get the run on the outside through 3 and 4 past the 38 of Zane Smith, and they knew right ahead as they were catching Chase Elliott that they were going to work together, and Reddick got that big run off of 4 to the inside, past the 9 car, and got by him just as they were starting to wreck, coming through the tri-oval, and Tyler Reddick emerges victorious as a Daytona 500 champion. The first 500 win for 2311 Racing, a team owned by Denny Hamlin, one of our stars of NASCAR and a future Hall of Famer, and one of the big names in sports, MJ, Michael Jordan. Who else could carry that iconic number 23 in sports? On the basketball court for the Chicago Bulls, where he won 6 titles. Now he's a Daytona 500 champion. And this is an historic win for not just Tyler Reddick, but also for Michael Jordan. For Michael Jordan, he, of course, has been a big fan of NASCAR growing up in his early days, even when he was becoming a basketball star. He would still love watching the NASCAR races and even go to them as a kid with his family. And he's been to Coke 600s, he's been to the Daytona 500s, and a couple years ago, as we all know, he and Denny Hamlin joined forces to form 2311 Racing and become a NASCAR Cup Series team and formed it with Bubba Wallace. Then they expanded to 2 cars in 2022, adding Kurt Busch. Then Tyler Reddick joined the team in 23 after Kurt Busch suffered a concussion at the Pocono qualifying crash that ended his career, basically. And Reddick, in his first year with the team, did really, really well. And 2024 was an incredible year for Reddick, as he had shown flashes of being a championship contender and made it to the Final Four, but didn't necessarily have the luck. But behind the scenes, for Michael Jordan in 2311, things weren't going so well. As we have all documented, they had been involved with this antitrust lawsuit against NASCAR, and it also included Front Row Motorsports. They didn't sign the new charter agreement because they weren't happy with the way NASCAR was handling things as far as cooperating with the teams and communication. So they went into this over year-long lawsuit about, the differences that these teams were having against NASCAR. But thankfully, last December, they came to a settlement, and the antitrust lawsuit was officially put to bed, and each team, those 2311 cars and Front Row Motorsports cars, were given brand new charters. So everybody shook hands after it was all said and done, and to open up the season for MJ and Denny Hamlin as car owners winning the Daytona 500. I mean, MJ said it best when he was interviewed in Victory Lane after the race. I felt like I just won the championship, even though that's what the next goal is for 2311 Racing, is to win the NASCAR Cup Series title. Winning the Daytona 500 is still a very special moment. So a big congratulations to MJ and Denny Hamlin. By the way, Jim France actually came to Victory Lane afterwards and congratulated Michael Jordan. After all the back and forth they went through, they could hug in Victory Lane as a congrats. That's a very wholesome moment. And it's a very wholesome moment, again, for Tyler Reddick, because last year he was competitive and very consistent, but he didn't win a single race last year. The cars were there, but he just couldn't seem to put together a race win at all last season. And a lot of that also, I think, the distractions off the track, not just with the lawsuit, but what was going on with him at home. As all of you know, he had his second son, Rookie, last year on the day of the Coca-Cola 600. But later in the year, unfortunately, his son had developed a tumor inside his body, and they had to go through surgery to try to remove that tumor, which I think it gave Tyler Reddick a really tough time, even though I don't feel like he wanted to admit that it was affecting him, but I could kind of tell his mind wasn't right, especially what he had to deal with. But thankfully, Rookie had a successful surgery. He's healthy and happy, and he was in Victory Lane yesterday with Tyler's wife, and Tyler's oldest son, Bo, celebrating victory in the Daytona 500. And another fun fact, Tyler Reddick, I realized this after he won yesterday, he has won the season opening race for all 3 of NASCAR's top 3 series. He won the Truck Series opener back in 2015 for Brad Keselowski Racing. In 2018, he won it in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series over his teammate Elliott Sadler at Junior Motorsports in one of the closest finishes in that series history. And then, of course, yesterday, winning the Daytona 500 for 2311 Racing in the Cup Series. And oh, by the way, with 3 different manufacturers, 2015, Ford, 2018, Chevrolet, 2026, a Toyota. That's an incredible accomplishment for Tyler Reddick. And nobody's ever done that before. So Tyler Reddick is setting new records as we speak. And it is a big moment for him to kick off this new season as a champion of the Great American Race. And of course, now with the new chase format we have, you can't say Tyler Reddick's not in the playoffs. But I guarantee you, folks, he will be one of our 16 drivers that will be competing in the chase for the Cup this year. He's that good, he's consistent too, and he's very, very fast. So a big congratulations to Tyler Reddick and the 45 team of 2311 Racing, champions of the Daytona 500. Number 2, oh so close for Elliott. Chase Elliott, the sport's most popular driver, was just a few feet away from becoming a Daytona 500 champion and joining his father, Bill Elliott, who's won this race 2 times as a father-son duo to have won the Great American Race. Elliott started the race in the 4th position after winning his dual race on Thursday, and for most of the race, he was quiet, but could see the front of the pack at times when he needed to. He only led 2 laps in the race yesterday, and they were both during a sequence of green flag pit stops before he would eventually make his next stop. But he was kind of quiet for most of the day, didn't really show a lot of flashes, actually hung out in the back of the pack in the middle of stage number 2, which I think was a smart decision because when we had some of those big wrecks in stage 2, he was far back enough to dodge those incidents. So very smart driving by one of the NASCAR's most consistent drivers in the sport. And then towards the very end of the race, he restarted actually that last restart in the 14th position, and it just seemed like he couldn't really go anywhere, was just trying to hopefully find the best spot possible. But when he got in that third lane on the white flag lap, and all those guys crashed in front of the pack, he all of a sudden found himself at the front, racing for the lead 3 wide with Reddick and Stenhouse Jr. Then he got the push from behind by Zane Smith down the back straightaway that propelled him into the lead, and it looked like the sport's most popular driver is going to finally get the monkey off his back and win the Daytona 500, but also winning a crown jewel event. But when I saw the Toyotas gained up off of 4, ready to make the move on the 9 car, you could tell right then and there, he was a sitting duck with nobody behind him to help. And Elliott tried everything he possibly could to hold back the 45 car, but when the 45 made the move to the inside, it wasn't enough for the 9 to hold him off, and he was just trying to get to the start-finish line and get the best finish possible. As they're coming through the tribal, he got clipped last second by the 35 car of Herbst and got knocked into the outside wall, and with a wrecked race car crossed the start-finish line in 4th spot. And I know that Elliott's disappointed about coming that close, and I know a lot of the fan base is very upset, but to take into account, what could he have done at the very end of the race? He did everything he could. He got himself to the front, and off of 4, there was really nothing he could have done to stop the run from the Toyotas behind him. What's he supposed to do? Like, move, shift left and right, fast maneuvering? If he does that, he's getting wrecked, and he's not going to get a top 5 finish. He's probably going to finish worse than that. So Elliott tried everything he possibly could to win that race, but he was just a sitting duck out front when those Toyotas were able to get by him. But still, there are some positives to take away for the 9 car. A top 5 finish is nothing to be too disappointed about. It's a great start to the season for the most popular driver who, with this new championship format, will be very consistent the rest of the year and have some wins along the way. And he had 10 points that he accumulated from his dual win on Thursday night that carried over into the race yesterday despite him scoring no stage points. So you take all those positives and he leaves Daytona 3rd in the point standings. It does suck to not win the Daytona 500. Everybody is here to try to win the Great American Race, something they dreamt of since they grew up watching their father's race or ever since they strapped into go-karts. Elliott tried everything he could yesterday. It just didn't work out that way for him. Sometimes you can't control these little things in life. But he gave it his best. That's all he could ask for, and he'll try again next year. And next week, he's off to his home track where last summer, he pulled off a thrilling pass on the last lap to win the race. Maybe he'll repeat the same thing, but oh so close for Chase Elliott. Number 3, key contenders fall short of their chance of winning the 500. A lot of our stars of NASCAR, particularly our champions, had a chance to either win their first Daytona 500 yesterday or maybe win it for the second time. But a lot of them fell short in their quest for the win. Kicking off with Joey Logano, who finished in the 3rd spot yesterday. Logano winning his dual race on Thursday looked like at the beginning of the race and when he was challenging for the lead, he was going to be one of the cars that you would have to beat to win the Daytona 500. And we all know he's a great drafter at Daytona, and he knows how to be aggressive at these races. But after battling up front for the majority of the early part of the race with guys like Chase Briscoe and Kyle Busch and a few others, when he got kicked in the middle of the pack, he really had a hard time getting back up there, and I just couldn't see the speed of that 22 car working his way further up the grid to try to contend for the race win. And he was just stuck back there, especially with all the guys that were running 3 wide in that final stage, and there was some fuel saving, and I know that's a little bit of a controversial topic, but he just couldn't seem to go anywhere for the most part, and even after that cycle of pit stops in the last segment of the race, he couldn't really get up there towards the pack. I think he was fortunate enough to miss that wreck in turn 1 in the last lap to find himself up inside the top 5, but he didn't really have a whole lot of help and momentum off of 4 to have a chance to get to Tyler Reddick for the victory, and all he could do was get the best spot possible, and he was part of that collision in the trial where he got knocked into the outside wall relatively hard. And I know that the last couple of years, it's been par for the course for Joey Logano to leave Daytona with a wrecked race car. But a wrecked race car in 3rd place, that's not too disappointing. And now you see if he could go for another championship in another even-numbered year. So a decent start for Joey Logano, but fell short of winning his 2nd Harley J. Earl Trophy. Then we go to Brad Keselowski, who was 0 for 16 entering the Daytona 500 yesterday. It looked like he was going to be able to have an opportunity to win the race for a guy that's coming off of a broken right femur in the offseason, which is one of the most painful injuries I understood in watching his pre-race segment that you could deal with. Brad yesterday had a very competitive, very fast race car and could run up front and do whatever he wanted. But when he got stuck in the middle of the pack and complained about a lot of those guys in front of him running 50% throttle, well, he was most of the time, I think, giving it at least 80% throttle. He was really upset with how they were doing, and he really wanted those Fords to line up and try to move those Toyotas that were dictating the pace based on their fuel saving mode to try to get up there and make some effort to get up to the front of the pack. They tried, but they kind of got in a little bit of a bind. Then they had those green flag pit stops, and they were able to cycle up inside the top 5. And then the caution came out, and then they had the late race restart. Keselowski was coming off of 4 with a massive run, trying to get the best spot possible. I don't think it was enough momentum to catch Reddick, but it was enough to probably finish in second place. But you saw Herbst come up the track to block the 6 car of Brad Keselowski and ultimately turn them both to the wall and ricocheted into traffic, collecting Elliott, Logano, and Stenhouse Jr. The wreck, I was a little bit worried for Brad because of the injury he had sustained. But when asked about it afterwards in the medical center, he said, "I'm feeling good." And, he thanked RFK Racing for giving him a very fast race car and at least a chance to win. However, he was not happy with what Riley Herbst did at the end, and I kind of agree. What was Riley Herbst trying to do there? What kind of block was that? You're going to cover a guy off who's got all the momentum? Just hold your line and hope for the best finish possible, even though it was a good result for the 35. You literally wrecked a couple of very fast cars coming through the tri-oval with that aggressive block and caused a chain reaction. I can understand Brad's frustration, and probably was not smart by Herbst. Brad called the move very, very stupid at the end. So another disappointing effort for Brad, not a 500 champion, but a top 5 is a good way to start the season. Then we go to the man that led the field to the green flag for yesterday's race, Kyle Busch, 0 for 21 in the Daytona 500. Yesterday was his 21st attempt to try to win the Great American Race, and did it by starting on the front row on the pole position. And early on, Kyle Busch had a very good race car. Richard Childress brought him a good piece for Daytona this weekend. But after we had our first caution in the race on lap number 5, when we had a mini pileup off of turn 4, a lot of the pack made their way down pit road for pit stops to try to top off the fuel. Everybody pitted but Kyle Busch, and I still can't understand what the decision was there between him and crew chief, new crew chief, mind you, Jim Pullman. I don't know what they were thinking there to leave him out there while everybody else came down pit road for fuel. He knew that he was going to be a little bit short on fuel compared to everybody else that came down, but he was able to maintain the pace up at the front. Then he got kicked in the middle of the pack, and then for a split second off of turn 4, he nearly lost it on the lower portion of the track. He lost it in the middle and came down and hit the 6-car Keselowski. Both of them hung on to it. That was an impressive save by both of those veterans who have a history with each other. Don't know if they've become much more acquainted the last couple of years as, maybe allies perhaps, but nonetheless, they both got out of there unscathed. And Kyle had to drop in the middle of the pack. Then he made that pit stop with other guys pitting with him. And then even after that pit stop, he was able to fight his way back up at the front of the pack and lead for a while. And again, that 8 car was fast, but then he got a little minor contact in that big wreck in the tri-oval in the late portions of the final stage, the closing laps of stage 2, mind you. And it kind of left him a little bit wounded, but he still was able to stay with the lead draft for the rest of the race, but once again, couldn't really do much. Then that last restart, he actually dropped out of the pack coming to take 2 to go, and their crew chief asked him, "Are you out of fuel?" And he's like, "No, what's the point of running with those guys as congested they are? They're going to wreck. What am I going to finish, 30th? When a lot of those guys wrecked in front of him, Kyle was far back enough to miss all of it, and he came out of there actually with a 15th place result. I know they would have wanted better, but that was a smart decision by Kyle Busch. Thinking about the big picture, if you can't win the Daytona 500, try to get the best result possible, especially with the new chase format this season where points matter. And Kyle Busch had some stage points from stage 2 yesterday, and he came out there with a top 15 and a good point position in points heading into next weekend's race at Atlanta. So think about that. If it comes down towards the end of the regular season finale before you decide who makes the chase, if Kyle Busch has enough points to make it in, he'll look back on this race as being a smart decision to lay back, let them wreck on the last lap, and pass them all to get a top 15 out of it. So, unfortunately, Kyle will have to wait another year, but he comes out of the Daytona at least relatively in one piece. Then we go to Kyle Larson, the defending Cup champion of the series. He was looking for his first Daytona 500 win yesterday. He seemed to have a pretty decent car at times, never really got up at the front of the pack like a lot of people thought he would, thinking that this could be the year he finally gets a chance at the Harley J. Earl Trophy. When he was caught up in that big wreck in the tri-oval in the closing laps of stage number 2, and it left him with no right front fender, but he thankfully stayed on the lead lap and was able to be in the pack for the closing laps of the race, but he wasn't competitive enough to go for the win, and at the end of the day, he has to settle for a 16th place result, which, still at Daytona, now with a fully damaged car, you can put on a new right side fender for Talladega. I mean, what are you going to do? But Kyle Larson, not a factor at the end of Daytona. And then we have Ryan Blaney, who has been close many, many times to win the Daytona 500. He had not really a competitive car to win the race yesterday. I mean, he did get up front and lead 2 laps, but it just seemed like him, and in general, Penske just didn't really have it yesterday for the Daytona 500. I don't know what was up with their pace. I mean, it's nothing against the drivers. It just seemed like they weren't really aggressive enough to make pushes up to the front of the pack and lead the race yesterday. I know Logano at the beginning of the race had led last because he started well up there, but Blaney and, his teammate Austin Cindric, they didn't do a whole lot. Blaney was unfortunately part of that wreck in the tri-oval, but suffered only minimal damage and got 9 points by finishing second in the end of stage 2. But when he got in the middle of the pack in the final stage, he couldn't really go anywhere as much as they were trying, especially to get up with their teammates. And when they had the last round of pit stops, when Blaney got off of pit road, the pack swallowed him up and he fell almost to the tail end of that pack and put him in a very bad spot for that final restart of the race. And that big wreck actually in turn 1, the last lap, he unfortunately got caught up in it and finished in, I think, the 25th spot and did not finish the race. So, tough start to the season for the 2023 champ. We'll have to wait another year before he could try to go get the 500. But, move off of that and head on to the next race. So, a lot of our champions trying for either their second 500 win or their first fell short in their quest yesterday. Number 4, chaos. We had a couple of big incidents in yesterday's Daytona 500 that affected the race. Didn't really have a whole lot in the first stage despite the lap 5 wreck where the 78 of BJ McLeod actually, something in the right rear wheel went down of turn 4 and he got into the pack and collected a few guys. Actually, William Byron, the 2-time defending 500 winner, was caught up in it but suffered minimal damage and carried on the rest of the race. But Casey Mears, who races Wayne Thursday, got involved. Noah Gragson got some left rear quarter panel damage. McLeod ultimately out of the race after that, and they're not running for the full season, so why bother trying to fix the car? But then in stage number 2, that's when it really got hectic, when we had Connor Zilic, the young phenom, in his Daytona 500 debut, racing up at the front of the pack for the lead with the likes of Denny Hamlin, Ross Chastain, and even Justin Allgaier for Junior Motorsports up there. But Zilic got a little bit loose in the middle of the pack, at the front of the pack, actually in the middle lane, coming off of turn 4, and then bounced off, made contact, and got sent into the pack along with Ty Gibbs, Chase Briscoe, our outside pole sitter, who had a fast car. Austin Dillon, the 2018 winner of the 500, got collected in it. Cody Ware and Todd Gilliland. A very precarious mistake. It was kind of on Zilic because he was kind of bouncing around, and obviously that, inexperience and the enthusiasm to get up there and just lead for the 500, I think, got the best of him right there. And ultimately, it took a couple of guys out with a chance to win the race, including Zilic himself. He was able to fix the car and finish the race, but not in the mix for the win at the very end. But he's a rookie. He'll make mistakes, but he will learn from these. He's a smart kid. He'll get the hang of it, and he'll have better results in the near future this year. But then the big incident happened in the tri-oval in the closing laps of stage number 2, where Justin Allgaier, who was out in front of the 500, was trying to cover the outside lane, and then Denny Hamlin, who had a run on the top, went almost up against the wall, and I think the spotter said to Allgaier, outside, thinking, I'm clear. No, there was a car out there. Allgaier comes up and makes contact with the 11 car, and it caused a chain reaction behind him, where many of the field got caught up, wrecking in the tri-oval all the way towards the exit of pit road. A lot of cars were caught up in that. Alex Bowman was affected in it, and he got knocked out of the race. Todd Gilliland, once again. Justin Allgaier's car was destroyed, unfortunately. Kyle Larson was a part of it. Zane Smith was involved. Ross Chastain was a part of the wreck as well. And Tyler Reddick, by the way, he sneaked his way through there with no damage whatsoever. He did a great job sneaking past. But a lot of cars were caught up in that wreck in the tri-oval, and I'm just like, guys, we're trying to win the Daytona 500. Why are we doing with all these blocks and being aggressive and all that? But a really tough moment for some of those guys that got caught out in that wreck. Some of them actually were able to fix the car and continue because they had minimal damage. But a couple guys mainly Bowman, Allgaier, and Gilliland, they were knocked out of the 500 and did not continue. But a lot of chaos. And obviously, we all saw what happened on the last lap in turn one, where Hocevar, leading the race, gets bumped by the 43 of Eric Jones, goes around and collects McDowell, and then a couple of cars in the middle of the pack crashed into each other. Blaney, John Hunter Nemechek, Jimmy Johnson, a lot of guys crashed in the last lap. But obviously, the aggression level kicks in, and whenever the Daytona 500 is on the line or you want the best spot possible, a lot of these things can happen. A lot of chaos in yesterday's race. And number 5, the racing. The last couple of years, the Daytona 500 with the next-gen car has been pretty mid to say. I mean, some people can say like 2022 was the best race by far with this next-gen car, which was... Well, it was. I mean, for the first time with a new body and style and everything, it was a good race. 2023 was decent. The last 2 years, obviously, affected by weather. And last year, they were 3 wide for most of the race, but they were fuel saving, and a lot of people were just pretty upset about that. But yesterday, there we saw these guys go at it left and right. We had 25 different guys lead this race, which is a new record, by the way. But we did not set the record for the most lead changes. That still stands at 74 lead changes, courtesy of the 2011 Daytona 500, where we had tandem racing at the time. But you had a lot of guys going back and forth up at the front of the pack yesterday, jockeying for position left and right, differing guys, even guys with lower budget teams up front leading. I mean, heck, Shane Van Gisbergen led the 500. Cody Ware for Rick Ware Racing led the Daytona 500. Now I've seen it all. But yesterday's race, these guys put on a thrilling show out there on the track in front of about 101,000 plus fans. And these guys put on a great show yesterday in front of 101 plus thousand fans to watch these guys go at it on the high banks of Daytona for the Great American Race. Yes, there was some fuel saving in the middle part of the final stage of the race, and a lot of people kind of called out the Toyotas that were doing that. Bubba, Christopher Bell, and Corey Heim for doing that. So, I mean, Ryan Blaney in particular said, we got to fix this, and Denny Hamlin's made comments about it. But yesterday, I mean, even like the very end of the race, these guys, you know, jockeying for position the best way they possibly could to try to get to the front and win this race. It was really entertaining racing. I will say it's by far, I think, been the best Daytona 500 with this next-gen car. Was it the greatest Daytona 500? No. But was it a good race with a thrilling finish? You better believe it. And I also want to give a shout-out to NASCAR for letting them race back to the finish on the last lap. Despite them wrecking briefly at the front in the middle of the pack, they let the guys that were still ahead of those wrecks race back to the line. So they pretty much held their ground and didn't hit the button to cause the caution and end the race. They let them race back to the line, and I commend NASCAR for that. They did a great job and let them race. It was a great, great race to start off the season. Also, again, I want to give a shout out to NASCAR because yesterday we started the race actually an hour earlier than we were expected to. The reason why is because there was a massive storm front moving to the southeast, and NASCAR did not want this 500 for the third year in a row to be affected by weather. So they moved up the start of the race to at least 2:15 p.m. We dropped the green flag, and when that checker flag flew, we got all 200 laps, 500 miles in, and we did it about an hour before the rain hit the racetrack. So great job, NASCAR, to get the race started a little earlier, and we got all the laps in. Great job, guys. And this season also starts off the 26th season for NASCAR on Fox, which debuted a new logo to their banner, and they also debuted some brand new graphics to their production yesterday. As you saw the scoreboard of the pylon of the drivers, a little bit different look, and when you saw the driver profiles, no more cartoon graphics or anything to show, like, you know, comic book style cartoon graphic of the drivers. They look really good. The new graphics looked really good. And I also want to commend NASCAR on Fox because yesterday, during the race, when we would go to commercial break under green, they went side by side where they showed the race on the left side of the screen and the commercials on the right side. They still, the fans watching from home, including myself, still got to watch the race even as they were in commercial break with them showing the commercials on the right side and seeing the race on the left side. They did this during every single time they were racing under green flag conditions yesterday. The only time they went to full screen commercial breaks was under yellow. Props to NASCAR on Fox Sports for making that happen. That was really, really good, and so proud of them for, you know, getting the start of the season with the new graphics package and letting us see all the green flag reps yesterday, even in side-by-side commercials. Yesterday also was a moment to honor some people. We had a lot of things we had to do yesterday. On the third lap of the race, we remained silent on lap 3 to honor the memory of the man in black, the Intimidator, Dale Earnhardt Sr., who 25 years ago, this Wednesday, February the 18th, it'll be a quarter of a century since we lost the Intimidator and that wreck on the last lap of the Daytona 500 in 2001 in turn number 4. It's still, I think, haunting for the drivers to be, driving through that turn and realizing that's where we lost Dale Earnhardt Sr. I mean, it's also where we lost Neil Bonnet in a 1994 qualifying crash, but mainly Earnhardt's wreck, it still haunts a lot of people to this day, but he may be gone, but the Intimidator will never be forgotten. We love you, Dale. We thank you for all you've done for NASCAR, and we still miss you to this day. Fox also did a great job with the little segments in their pre-race show with the tribute honoring Greg Biffle. Of course, as we all know, he passed away in a plane crash in the off-season with his family a week before Christmas, and it was a really sad time for the NASCAR community, but Fox Sports did a great job with the little tribute honoring the Biffle for what he did on the track and also what he did off the track, helping those that were affected by Hurricane Helene in Asheville, North Carolina. And when they had the drivers, commentators, Kevin Harvick, Clint Boyer, and Jamie McMurray talk about in the pre-race, Jamie McMurray, you could tell he was trying to hold back tears because he and Biffle were good friends. They were teammates at Roush for 4 years. They let their kids go to school together. They were good buddies. And it was Greg Biffle that helped push Jamie McMurray to the lead of the Daytona 500 in 2010 that McMurray won, which was key because if Biffle didn't push McMurray, I think Dale Jr. had a shot at him, but it was Biffle that helped McMurray win that 500, and McMurray credited Biffle for it in victory lane. So a very emotional time for Jamie McMurray, and it's still a lot of us still dealing with the fact that Biff's not here with us anymore, but we'll always remember, be like Biff. And another segment that I really liked yesterday was the Tom Rinaldi segment where they take one of our most accomplished reporters and storylines from, obviously he covers the NFL on Fox, but he also came to Daytona yesterday and had an exclusive about Denny Hamlin and what he had to deal with last year, losing the championship, and of course talking about his parents and how much they meant to him and how they helped put a lot of sacrifices made to get Denny Hamlin the chance to run race cars and has had a successful career, and of course documented about losing his dad when his parents' house caught fire last December, and how he lost his dad, and it was tough. Well, he knew that his dad was battling COPD, and he knew he didn't have much time left on this earth. But Hamlin, he had a good interview with Tom Rinaldi, and he kept his composure yesterday. I'm really proud of him for being able to hold it together while discussing, his parents and everything. And by the way, his mom, Mary Lou, was actually at the race yesterday. You saw her on pit road with him next to his car, and you could tell it was an emotional time for her to be at the track and not have Dennis there with her. But a great segment by Tom Rinaldi and Denny Hamlin. Yesterday, the scene of the Daytona 500 was absolutely out of this world. We had Nate Bargatze be the Grand Marshal to give the command to start engines. Well, I mean, it was a really good command. It was. It wasn't the best, but it was still a really solid command. We had country sensation Miranda Lambert perform our pre-race concert, performing her song Kerosene on the Fox coverage. You had Kurt Russell, acclaimed actor, be the honorary pace car driver for the Daytona 500. We had Rams star wide receiver Puka Nacua at the track running a two-seater with now newly inducted Hall of Fame member Kurt Busch. John Gruden, former Super Bowl winning head coach of the Buccaneers, was at this race yesterday having the blast and time of his life. Beast Mode, Marshawn Lynch, he was also in attendance for the Great American Race yesterday, and he certainly seemed like he was having a great time with Bubba Wallace, and he's also in that commercial that led previewing the Daytona 500. That was really, really cool. So good to have Beast Mode at the track. A lot of stars, a lot of celebrities at the track yesterday. It was a lot of fun. And also, I want to give a quick shout-out, congratulations to Austin Hill, who won the season-opening NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race Saturday night, holding off Justin Allgaier for the victory. Austin Hill, you can't stop him at these drafting tracks in the O'Reilly Series. He's just that good. And he's going to his home track next week. And then Friday night, we had Chandler Smith for Front Row Motorsports win the season-opening Craftsman Truck Series race at Daytona. They had a nice dash to the finish off of Turn 4 where John Hunter Nemechek was leading, trying to cover off Christian Eckes and Gio Ruggiero, and then opened up the bottom for Chandler Smith, who got pushed from behind by Ty Majeski to take victory at the start-finish line. It was a great truck race, by the way. Not a lot of, there were some wrecks, but not a crap ton, and it was good racing. All three series races this weekend ended under green flag conditions, despite a couple of guys, middle of the pack, having issues. They let them race the line. So good job by all those 3 series. Now that the season's officially underway, we are off to Echo Park Speedway in Atlanta, a 1.5-mile track, but it runs like a drafting track. Ever since the new configuration from 2022, we've had drafting style races at this track for all 3 series. For the Cup Series, the last couple of years that we've gotten some age on this track, this might be one of the best race tracks that you go to because this racing is absolutely off the chains. It is so much fun watching these guys battle it out left and right, 3 wide, side by side. Handling's becoming more of a factor now that we've gotten age on this track, but we've had some pretty nice races and some nice finishes to go along with it. Will we have another banger this upcoming Sunday? Will Christopher Bell back up his win from last year, or can the Atlanta homeboy Chase Elliott take victory like he did last summer? We shall see. But now the season is officially underway, and it's time to get to race number 2. The race to make the chase is officially begun. So thank you all so much for watching. Subscribe, like, and congratulations to Tyler Reddick and 2311 Racing, champions of the Daytona 500. Have a great week, everybody. Let's go racing!